Here we go. You all ready?
Yes.
Yes, okay. The first question this evening. Dear Ab, says AB. That's a trouble with Malaysia. You always put things in short acronyms. Another one. Very good. Anyway, Ajahn Brahm. According to physics, energy can neither be created or destroyed. Yes. So I wonder, where does the first mental energy, nama, come from? Can Ajahn please explain this? Thank you. This is an easy one. So energy, to be accurate, is called mass energy. Because energy and mass are interchangeable. So we can get some mass and turn it into energy, energy into mass, because that's where the nuclear energy comes in. Mass turns into energy. But it's true that the sum total of mass energy always must remain the same. So where did this universe come from? I remember, because I am well connected, I remember just doing a seminar together with our local professor of physics at our University of Western Australia. He was very well regarded. Eventually was Australian Scientist of the Year for something or other. But I remember just posing this question. Where could this universe come from? Stuff. It cannot be created, cannot be destroyed. So where can it come from? But then, for those of you who did some science when you were many, many years ago, everything, say, this little, he lost his glasses again, never mind. He doesn't need to see. This has got a certain weight, a certain mass. But if I use some of this mass to send it out into orbit beyond the Earth's gravitational field, I could use some of the energy in its mass here. It's got a negative energy component. Now, I'm not making this up. I was a theoretical physicist before. It was a negative energy component. Any mass in a gravitational field, electric field, or any other field of energy does have a negative mass. So to take this out of the Earth's gravitational field, it has to lose some energy somehow. So there is a thing in science called negative energy. And I don't mean emotional stuff. I mean real negative energy. Some total of energy in a gravitational field, electric field. You see, it's keeping on losing its energy. So I remember just asking Professor Blair, his name was, David Blair. I looked at him and said, what would happen if just all the mass in this whole universe, the whole lot of it, could all be brought together? Would it mean that the sum total of mass energy, when it all came together, it would all cancel it out, all the negative energy and positive energy would all come to a grand sum of zero? I remember him looking at me, saying, wow, you're really up to date. Omega equals 1. And if you're theoretical physics, that is physics talk, which means yes, it does all cancel itself out. If you take every bit of matter and energy in this whole universe, kind of bring it together, it doesn't go bang. It goes, everything gone. That's matter. that stuff. We're not talking about the mind now, but why not the mind as well? If all the things of Datuk Victory, all his many lives, all his many experiences, the negative and positive, it all came together and then nothing left. That's called Nibbana. Why do you want to have something left? This universe, where did it come from? Came from nothing? It goes back to nothing if it could all come together. I've answered that many times before. To me, that's a beautiful answer. The next thing about it all coming together, or where did it come from? The one thing I haven't explained in this little argument is time. When we think of time, we think of time in a manner of flat time, like flat Earth. Is Malaysia flat? Okay, it's got a few bumps in it called mountains and hills and valleys. But many years ago, centuries ago, thousands of years ago, people would look and think the earth is flat. And that's why many people were really scared of getting in a boat and sailing off. They really literally thought they'd fall off the edge of earth. Then what's past the edge of earth? But of course, now we all know that the earth, the planet on which we live, is not flat. It's this curved surface, like a ball. And the curved surface of a ball, the area on which we live, is a limited space. We know the area of planet Earth, but it's got no edges or boundaries to it. You can't fall off the edge of that boundary, just go around and come back to where you started from. And that's exactly the same with space. How big is space? I'm talking about our universe. Is there an edge of space? I remember thinking about this as a kid. What happens if you get a fast enough spacecraft and you go to the edge of space, the very limit of space? And what do you see there? Is like a group of alien spacemen or like alien policemen saying, sorry, you can't go any further. Or like a barbed wire fence saying, no, the end of space cannot go any further. If there's any barrier, then there's always something on the other side of that barrier. How on earth can there be an edge of space? But then, if space is infinite, goes on forever, there's actually a proof. I think it's Obler's theorem. Anyone know Obler's theorem? This guy Obler, years ago, he made a very simple proof that space cannot be infinite. It has to be finite. And in fact, we can actually work out how big space is. It's a finite volume, but no edges to it. Just like planet Earth. Finite space, but no edges to it. It's curved. Curved space, not flat space, means it's got finite volume, but no edges to it. That makes life interesting. We always felt that Malaysia is the center of the world and the universe. So did many other countries. And it doesn't matter to you, it can be the center. But if it's on a ball, if you imagine like a football or a basketball, what's the centre of that sphere? It's got no centre. Every place is its own centre. A limited space or volume, but no edges to it. That is accepted by science. Everybody knows that and accepts it. So now let's go to the next level. We never believe in flat space anymore. We never feel as that space has an edge to it somewhere if you go far enough. What about time? We still think in terms of flat time. Time with a beginning and time with an end. None of that made any sense to me as a kid. So instead of calling it flat time, we have curved time. Just like every other dimension of our universe. Curved time. You cannot find a beginning. You cannot discern an end. No boundaries to it, but limited. Somebody else once said, the beginning of time is undiscernible. What was that fellow called, I think? The Lord Buddha. Did the Lord Buddha ever say about the beginning of time? It says undiscernible. It's a logical inconsistency. The same as if you can embrace not the time of flat earth or flat space. We still live in an age of flat timers. Time isn't flat. That gives you something to think about now, so you probably won't be able to get any sleep tonight. That's a beautiful argument. And that's how scientists, physicists will see beginnings and ends. No beginnings, no ends. Round and round and round. The wheels of samsara. I agree that's not in the suttas, but nevertheless, some of it is about no beginnings, no ends. Anyway, hi Ajahn Brahm. It is a pleasure to be able to meet you in the retreat. Really? I thought everything was dukkha. Sometimes whatever is a pleasure when you meet it is suffering when you have to depart. So what's the solution? There is no ever. Remember, time is curved. So is Ajahn Brahm. He's curved too. Where am I curved? In the middle, because I follow the middle way. Like a good Buddhist. You know, sometimes I remember going through the customs over in, I think it was New York, and they insisted, I didn't have much baggage. You've seen me at the airport, my baggage was just a little bag which I carried. And sometimes they said, well, you haven't got much baggage there, what have you got under your robe? And before I could answer, this was in a time of Homeland Security, the guy on the customs immigration said, is that a suicide belt? And I said, no, it's only a bit of extra fat. Same thing, he said. It's a suicide belt. Anyway, what's the rest of the question? I have a question. Thank you. Asking on behalf of a friend. Ooh. Is same-gender relationships an issue that will disrupt our spiritual path in Buddhism, or is it not? The spiritual path is not disrupted or encouraged by relationships. One of the things, first of all, I have to be careful because, we are in Malaysia. It's important you follow the rules as best you can of the country in which you are in. You're going to cut it out? Okay, yeah. Okay. That's one way of keeping in Malaysia for a long, long time. Get me arrested. I know your trick. No, I don't. You wouldn't do that. But like all relationships sort of are problematic, as you all know. So the best relationship, first of all, to work out is the relationship with this person who bears your name. Like, I work out how I regard Ajahn Brahm, whatever that is, and how you regard them. First of all, can you accept yourself as you are? Can you say to yourself, the door of my heart is open to me? To yourself, no matter who you happen to be, with all your faults and difficulties. If you can, if you accept this being who is you, and give it this kindness and love in this moment, then you can come much closer to it and understand what it actually is. And a lot of times what you see when you have that type of acceptance, there's nothing really there. That was a simile. I gave this simile over in, actually not in Nolamara, I think the last talk I gave there. That time when I was only 18, just turned 18, and between school and university, and I was a whiz kid, I have to be honest. So I did my A-levels at 16 and got my university entrance when I was 17. I could not go to university then because they had rules. You had to be 18 years of age before you could actually go into Cambridge. But I didn't mind at all because it meant I had about 10 months of my life from getting the scholarships, all confirmed to go to university until I actually could get in there and physically go there. I had about 11 months gap year. So, my father had died, my mother was poor, so I got a job doing all sorts of silly things, saved money, and then the first thing I did was go with a friend to North Africa. Because I always wanted to explore. It's one thing seeing these places in geography books, or even seeing movies about these things. But when you actually go there and see it for yourself, it's a totally sort of rich experience. So having gone to North Africa for a few months, and then I got back into UK, and the next trip, just almost 2 or 3 weeks after I landed, actually when I went to North Africa, I figured out, the way to get by was actually take my guitar with me. So I can't play very well, but I took a guitar out with me. And so that got me entrance into many people's houses. So I could have a place to stay at night, and you were young. And it was very good, actually, if you ever needed to get a lift, like hitchhiking or something. If you had a guitar, people would give you a lift. So anyway, that's what, I was only 17 as well. But anyway, after doing that, and then the next trip for the United States, and that was like a student trip, but for 3 months. And it was kind of boring going to the US because it was just like any other sort of first world country. So then I decided to be much more interesting to go to Mexico and Central America. And that was such a good choice. Just turned 18 and then going to Central America to go up those pyramids in the jungles, in the Yucatan Peninsula, in the place, the archaeological site was called Tikal, T-I-C-A-L. I didn't have my guitar this time. So I was just going on whatever transport you could get, which was a bus, and then a fishing boat to go up the Caribbean coast. And that's one thing where I really remembered just the power of beauty. To go up there, I hadn't slept all night, all day and all night. And I was really, even as a 18-year-old, you feel really exhausted. But then you were going on this fishing boat along the Caribbean Sea at dawn. And the dawn and along the Caribbean Sea was just breathtakingly beautiful. And even though I just wanted to sleep, I just couldn't miss any of that. It was thrilling. One of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen. And I always remember that. Every time you get a lovely meditation and you get happiness coming up, please don't be afraid of that happiness. Don't try and get rid of it. Don't ever think you get attached to it. That happiness is an important part of meditation. That piti sukha totally overcomes any desire to be sleepy. The sloth and torpor just get vanished, which is why you've heard me say, and many of you may have seen it, sometimes people meditating, they can sit up here all night and they don't go to sleep, and in the morning they're not sleepy. To tell you one of those stories, I'm glad there's not many questions. I won't finish them probably in 2 hours. One of those stories, it happened in Sydney. And this is not a Western monk or a Thai monk. It was a Vietnamese monk, Theravada Vietnamese monk. And he was teaching a 9-day meditation retreat. And he started the retreat, by everybody meditating at 7:30 to 8. And at 8 o'clock, he was due to give a talk. That's pretty common. But when 8 o'clock came, he was still meditating. He didn't come out of meditation for 8 days. Serious. He just sat there. And when the people looked at that after a while, they didn't sort of try to wake him up or actually to get him out of meditation. They just went off to bed. And they got up in the morning, he was still sitting there. They had their breakfast, and they came there to listen to the morning talk. No talk, he was still sitting there. He never moved, never went to the toilet, never ate anything, never said anything for 8 days. And eventually, when he did come out of meditation, the first thing he did was apologize. He said, I'm sorry, I got into a very deep meditation, and this is just what happens. It's my fault, because I should have just given myself just a message before I entered meditation. I must come out by this time to be able to give you a talk. That's how we usually do it. Just like when you go to bed at night, you don't need an alarm clock if you know how to do other things, such as you tell yourself, I must get up at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. I must get up at 5 a.m. I must get up at 5 a.m. And you trust that, and it always works. This is what you do when you meditate. If you get into deep meditation, I must come out by this particular time. And he forgot to do that. So he went in there for 8 days. And after he apologized, all the Vietnamese Buddhists who were there said, no, you don't need to apologize. That was so inspiring to see that that's possible even in these days. And so, they carried on the retreat for 1 day, but they were just really amazed they could actually witness and see that. So, anyway, I had to get into this. Okay, so relationships. Sometimes having a relationship with oneself, first of all, can you actually be kind to yourself? I'm not talking about a sense of ego or atta or anything, but just to this person you've got to know for so many years. Have you forgiven all the faults which you've seen in yourself? Have you allowed yourself to be praised? And that's a hard one. This particular, okay. Please tell me to not tell too many stories, because I can go all night just with this one question. There was once, like a datuk, that's an amazing title. It's like Sir here in Malaysia. And I don't have Sir title, but there's a few sort of medals and awards which I've been given over my life. And I remember one of those was from one of our universities in Western Australia, John Curtin University. It was the John Curtin Medal. And this was by people who had seen what I was doing, especially for the Buddhist community, more than that, over in Western Australia, and thought this needs to be recognised. So they awarded me this medal, and I had to go to the ceremony. And of course, whenever you're awarded a medal like that, you have to give a speech. And I remember my speech. The speech was, "Thank you very much, it's a great honour. But quite frankly, there are other people in the community who've done much better work than I've done. I'm not quite sure why you chose me, but thank you anyway. And also, I wouldn't have been able to do this without the help and support of so many people throughout the world. People like the BGF, help me make sure I'm looked after when I'm here. But, so thanks for all those supporters, and, thank you anyway." And so that was my speech. And then the next year, I was invited to the next person who got an award. And I still remember him. He was called Professor Jogfi. And he was the head hematologist at one of the biggest hospitals in Perth. And he was an expert on dealing with people who had cancer to make sure their blood was treated properly. But he noticed something. Even though he was a great professor, people were going to get world-class treatment for their cancer. But when they walked outside of that hospital, it was they were just people on a production line. They were not getting much aftercare. I don't know what your experiences have been with cancer, with people who've had cancer, and maybe your own. You know what a terrible disease that is. How much uncertainty, how much pain, even disfigurement. And so he thought, you can do better than this. So together with a local, actually a milk company, he got funding for this project, and he kicked a few people out of rooms in the hospital which they weren't making the best use of, and he turned it to the Braham's Alternative Therapy Centre. And anybody who had any cancer treatment in that hospital could go into this alternative therapy centre after their treatment and get anything which was weird. Get Reiki, homeopathy, acupuncture or whatever, things which in those days did not have much of a scientific grounding to it, according to most Western medics, and they could have free treatment there for half an hour or an hour after their radiation therapy. And the only reason was that somebody actually was with them with these treatments, whether it's massage or reflexology, foot massage. Someone's actually caring for you. You're not just going in the machine. A real person. And a real sort of kindness. And he was ridiculed at first, but he had such a good reputation in his main field of hematology. He managed to get those places in about 2 or 3 years. he made a report on the effect of just a little bit of kindness after this usual way of healing cancers, and had a huge effect. The statistics showed that people's recovery rate was far, far greater. And I said I have helped out as best as I can with people recovering from cancer or their friends who had cancer, and I realized how important that was. So when I heard what he'd done, put his reputation on the line to serve, to be compassionate, I thought, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And what an amazing person that is. And so he went up to accept his medal, and then he gave a speech. And his speech was, I don't know why you've chosen me. There's many other people, even in my own hospital, who do much, much better work, and I couldn't have done that without the help of all my supporters and nurses and family and everything, but thank you anyway. And straight away I thought, hey, that was my speech last year. And that was actually so informative. So much insight came out of that. Even me, I was chosen by many other people. They weren't dummies, these were university professors, lecturers, who investigated what I'd done. They'd investigated what Professor Jofi did, and I certainly would have voted for him. Why is it that people always reject praise? When you say thank you for being my upatak, how do you feel? Say, no. I didn't do much. Each one of you really reject praise. You haven't noticed that before. So if anyone praises you, you say, yes, I deserve that. That's learning how to respect oneself, love oneself, you're getting a good relationship with yourself. And what happens if you accept praise? Do you get a big head? No. You get a big tummy, that's what you get. No, what really happens, if you accept praise, you try harder to do the same thing again or something even better. When you encourage people by praising them, they do even better next time. So any of you who've got kids or grandkids and they do well in some exam, please praise them. Praise them big time. And then they will try even better to do even better next time. That's actually how praise works. Anyway, so dear Ajahn Brahm, it's a pleasure to be able to meet you on this retreat. Yes, I deserve that. Anyway, I have a question on behalf of a friend. Gender relationship issue that will disrupt our spiritual path in Buddhism, or does it not? It depends again what that spiritual path is really going to be. If you're going, for broke and really trying to get into some deep meditation, and the relationship issue is usually at first basically to make you have kids. That's why years ago I remember reading this article, I think it was in Time magazine, The Chemistry of Love, they said. Boy meets girl and you fall in love. What actually do you fall in love with? You love the way that partner makes you feel. Basically, the sense of pheromones which are excreted when they come into your presence, you really get off on. But that usually only lasts for a couple of years, so they said. You learn how to get, not immunity, but like a tolerance. The body knows that it's not exciting anymore. And have you ever gone out with somebody for a couple of years and then afterwards they don't really turn you on as much as they did when you first met? Which is chemistry, that's all. Unless you get pregnant. And then another set of chemicals get secreted, which lasts much longer. Basically, you are conditioned actually to be together because that keeps the baby supported and safe for much longer. And then after you've had your kids, after you've produced the next generation, then what happens? Sorry? Yes, I know, but that's something kind of different. It's not the same. Do you have the same love, same type of love, as you have for your actual child? The love of a mother or a father for their child is something really special, much more so than grandchildren. But anyway, that means that's the time. Please excuse me again. The men get fat, women, and they're not as shapely as they used to be. In other words, you get less attractive. It's the chemistry. What I think Rupert Sheldrake used to call a selfish gene. The genes are there, they control you, just to make sure that you have relationships which work, which produce children. If they don't, then you separate and you have another, try with another partner. I know that's pretty sort of unemotional and hard science, but remember, I'm a monk and I'm a theoretical physicist. That's what you can expect from me. So anyway, what was that all about? Anyway, relationships, yeah. And with same gender relationships, that's why sometimes if you have, if you are inclined towards that, sometimes it's best to incline towards that in another country because it's dangerous for you here. Come to Australia. Okay. My goodness, it's pretty similar. What does Buddha say about romantic relationships? You know that those of you who've been to my retreat centre, Jhana Grove, in Jhana Grove we were donated these two stupas. It's a Borobudur stone. And got these beautiful Buddha statues inside. Remember seeing them? And there is a tradition around those stupas. If you can get up onto the platform, and if you can put your hand inside, and if you can touch one of those Buddhas inside, the tradition is you will find true love. This is great. There's great questions on a meditation retreat. But anyway. So I remember seeing one of the monks doing that, putting their hand inside. Did you find true love? They said yes. Loving the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. That's true love. Have you heard that before about the stupas of Borobudur? Yeah. Anyway, see if it's anything. No romance one? No, good. You don't mind me being honest with you, do you? But for all these years I've been a monk, I've never ever wanted to do anything else over 50 years. A few times I have got, what do you call it, proposals? I remember the first time I was still a lay person, and it was one of the scariest things which ever happened to me. Honestly. People sometimes ask you, have you ever been really scared? You've seen snakes and tigers and stuff and elephants in the forest and all goodness knows what else. But the one time I was really terrified, it was still at university, and one of my friends was getting married at university. So, after the marriage ceremony was all done, then, just the men were just standing around with your friends or your mates. And then we had this stupid conversation. I don't know if girls have stupid conversations like this, but men certainly do. And the conversation was, who's going to be next? Remember, we were at Cambridge University. That was just knowing you were going to that university. That made you attractive. You'd be a good earner for the future if you didn't become a monk. And so then we said, first of all, one of my friends, his name was Jeff, said he'd probably be next. And then we all looked at him and we had our informed decision, said, no, he won't be next. No girl will want to marry him. And those boys being silly. And then the next one had said, me. My lay name was Peter. Oh, Peter, he'd be next. And then before they all said no, I heard this girl standing next to me and said, I would marry you. Ooh. I moved away from her very quickly. But I shouldn't say this, but afterwards, when you are a monk, that monks are very well trained. That as a young monk, you know how to build, you know how to cook, and you clean, and you're always honest, you're trustworthy. And I remember a few of my monks who didn't survive, who did actually disrobe and get married, sometimes their wives would come up to me and say, thank you for training my husband. So if you're not married yet and you really want a good husband, then an ex-monk, they're really, really good. Good value for money. Bad karma. So anyhow, when I gave a talk like that, like I'm giving to you, then just after the talk, this lady came by and said, Ajahn Brahm, if ever you feel you don't want to live as a monk, I'm wealthy. Here's my number. I said, no, no chance with me. Wasting your time. I can only say that because I'm so confident of being a monk. There's no way in the world I'm going to ever do anything. I said, I'm too old now. Anyway, so romantic relationships, that's that one done. Next question. I listen to your Dhamma talk every night. The same one. I listen to your Dhamma talk every night before sleep. Your talk is a lullaby to me. Oh my goodness. Due to depression, anxiety and overthinking, I couldn't sleep without listening to your talk. Thank you very much for sending me to sleep. For the emotional support. I don't know why that is, but a lot of times people have said that to me. So much so that I'm sure you've heard this before. When I was giving a presentation in Berkeley, the University of California, then the MC came up and said, I would now like to introduce my teacher, Ajahn Brahm. And she said, I go to bed with him every night. What? You can't say that. She did, of course, everybody knew what was happening. But she too would listen to the talk, and it would make her calm and confident, nothing to worry about, and she could actually have a good night's sleep. And of course, you don't worry that, but she did actually say, "This is what I really mean." Thank goodness for that. I am a good monk. Okay, so should I say my confession? Be nice, okay. Always like telling the truth. That many years ago, there was all of this accusations against some of the monks. There were forest monks too involved, who were accused of having girlfriends and mistresses. So one night at Nonamara, you can find the talk, I'm sure, it's still there. One day I put my head down and said, people always have these questions about celibate monks. And I said, no, it's great to be honest, and I think I really need to tell you that I spent many of the happiest days of my life in the loving arms of another man's wife. Of another man's wife. We kissed, we hugged, we loved each other. And she was married to somebody else. When I said that, a few people were already getting up and going to the door, never going to come back again. Until I said, that woman was my mum. She was another man's wife, my dad. I spent some of the most wonderful years of my life before I was a monk in the loving arms of another man's wife, my mum. So there's nothing wrong at all with that. But when I said that, first of all, I said it in such a way, kind of led people to trying to see the wrong perception in that. There was shenanigans again. But that's one of the reasons why. Be careful when you listen to words, because sometimes you may get the wrong idea. What you've heard is true, but the meaning is something which you never expected. So be careful not to judge people too quickly. Next question. What is the difference between Mahayana and Theravada Buddhism? The spelling. I really like that answer. Sometimes one of the main kind of differences is, the idea of what the goal is in Buddhism. So in Theravada, we always say it is the becoming fully enlightened, becoming an arahat. Mahayana said that's being too selfish, because once you're an arahat, fully enlightened, you don't come back again. You're gone. You're out of here. So they say that's not being compassionate enough. But please remember, and you can see all of the suttas, they always say, if you're a bodhisattva, you're unenlightened. You're an unenlightened bodhisattva. If you're enlightened, then you become an arahat or a Buddha. That's only two. So, I would ask you, if you say have a heart attack by laughing too much at Ajahn Brahm's silly stories, who would you like to actually to treat you, to give an operation or to put in a stent or to heal your heart? Would you like to have a professor who's studied and got all the accreditation and finished his studies? Or would you rather have a medical student? Who would you want? Of course. So if you want somebody to teach you about enlightenment, who would you want? Someone's already enlightened, or someone's still unenlightened. Yeah, exactly. So why did we actually have Mahayana Buddhism to begin with? And this is only my theory. You can argue with me if you wish. But I think it was in those early years after the Buddha had, parinibbanated. Then sometimes, there were some monks in those days, this is a couple of thousand years ago, who weren't enlightened yet, but still were, had lots of teaching, lots of responsibility to do. And so they would come up with another possibility, become a bodhisattva. They said that's even more compassionate than being fully enlightened. And I remember reading when I was young in a book by Alexander David Neil, who did go to Tibet and managed to go around. And one of the scams, it's actually just not one place, many monks use this. One of the monks, please excuse me for being direct, if I'm going too far, it's not what you expect of a monk, and fair enough, I apologize, but this particular monk, he'd been serving the local town for a long time, and then he got bored with being a monk. Instead of just disrobing, he went up to the lay people in one of the talks. He said, my meditation's getting really good now, and so I don't think I can really stop it anymore, that I'm going to be fully enlightened soon. So, I won't be able to come back to your village anymore, your town, to teach anymore. It's too strong. And so the headman of the village and all the other senior village people said, please don't get enlightened. We want you to come back again. And this monk said, well, I'll have to do something really, 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 really bad to not come back again. So the headman said, please do something really, 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 really bad. So I think you know where the story's going. I said, oh, please, what do you want to do? Anything really, really, really bad. We'll really praise you for that. And so he said, well, there's this lady who's been very friendly with me. So can I marry her? That's what he wanted all the time. And I said, oh, please, what a great sacrifice it is if you marry this woman. Please marry her and we'll set you up with a house and you don't have to do any work, we'll look after you. And that's what he did. It was just corruption, cheating people. So which person would you rather have to teach you? Someone who already sort of properly enlightened. How do you know a person is enlightened or not? By what they teach. And many people can teach all sorts of things. But one of the best ways of seeing a person, how trustworthy they are, is that how they behave. Sila, virtue. That's much more trustworthy than anything else. And that's also one of the reasons why I try and encourage all of my monks and nuns that at least once a year on Katina Day, keep the doors of your heart open. Let people have a look inside, how you live. And that is most inspiring. Sometimes you may ask me, Ajahn Brahm, put aside all those psychic powers with Ajahn Chah. And you were with him for about 9 years, Ajahn Brahm. Do you think that Ajahn Chah was fully enlightened? And of course my answer is yes. And the thing which really convinced me, after so many years, he had so many monks, Ajahn Chah asked me, can you please get something from my room? It was the first and only time I've been up to his room where he slept and meditated alone. And even at this time, some incredibly wealthy people in Thailand were supporting him, including Her Majesty the Queen of Thailand. So I thought that his room would be just so extravagant, having so many things. When I went up into his room, it's almost like I felt like crying. His bed was a grass mat on the floor. We haven't got any of those grass mats. You've seen them in Thailand. Sometimes they make them out of plastic now. And a wooden pillow. Not even a sort of soft pillow like I've got on my bed here. Just a wooden pillow and 1 or 2 robes on the line, and that was it. There was hardly anything there. And this was a monk who was being supported by royalty, who would give him anything he wanted. And that was really sort of inspired me. He could have anything, but he had so little by choice. I don't know about you, but that kind of stuff which inspires me. So have a look how people live. Okay. Mahayana Theravada. Other than that, what is Mahayana? What are you supposed to practice? You know, they always say that Mahayana devotes their life to serving others. A lot. And I remember just getting to know many sort of Mahayana monks and nuns. And then I remember asking this one Mahayana nun. I liked her very much. She was one of the people who we were talking about the possibility of bhikkhuni ordination in Theravada. And at that time I thought it's too much trouble. That's what I said then. And she was one of the ones who changed my mind. In a conference, she got on the microphone and said, Ajahn Brahm, that's so patronizing, you should be ashamed of yourself. And I said, actually, yes, I think I agree with you. So I went back and so why not? Let's do it. And her name was Ifa. She was one of the nuns in the Fo-Guang-Shan tradition. Yeah. She was very feisty. And that's what I really liked about it. But then afterwards, I said, well, that was really admirable. How many disciples or nuns do you teach? I said, I don't. I just look after myself. I'm more Mahayana than you are. I've got lots of disciples, lots of monasteries, look after lots of groups like the BTF. And said, yeah, that's true. So she admitted that underneath the robes, she was more Hinayana than I was. But anyway, when people ask what is my tradition, you know what's going to come. You've heard me say this before. I try to join all these traditions together. I don't care what kind of robes you wear. And I try to incorporate all the best in each of one of those traditions. So I join Hinayana, the H from Hinayana, the Aha from Mahayana, and the Yana from Vajrayana. And what does that spell? Hahayana. That's my path. Yeah. Okay. Are you okay with me answering like this, or do you want things more serious? One thing I try and make it light, because it's getting late, that if I get too serious, you'll go to sleep anyway. Okay, one Dharmi Bhante, that means respects. Someone complained that I talk too much despite already reading my speech. How do I deal with anger of receiving the nasty comment? You always get nasty comments. I don't know, whoever you are in this world, someone will give you a nasty comment somewhere. Is there anyone sitting here who's never had a nasty comment given to them? No, exactly. What I would say is try and exploit it to your advantage. If anyone came up to me and said, I talk too much, I said, okay, I'm going to bed. Good night. So turn it to your advantage. Some of the stories. What was it? This was in the time in Ubon, just at the end of the Vietnam War. And there was an Air Force base. It's now actually the Ubon airport. But before it was an US Air Force base, where they would fly into Vietnam during the war. And one day there was this huge, big, strong African American soldier who was going into town. So he got like a rickshaw, and the rickshaw driver was driving him into town, and they passed, some of the rickshaw driver's friends who were getting drunk in a bar on the side of the road. And because they were drunk, they looked at this Afro-American soldier. They were racist, and they said, where are you taking that dirty dog to? And that's fighting talk. And the guy who was driving the rickshaw was really scared. His friends were drunk and they could run away, they were far enough away, but he was actually driving the rickshaw. So he looked at the soldier, and the soldier was just admiring the scenery. Obviously, he couldn't understand the local language of Isan language. So the driver joined in, had a joke at the expense of the African soldier. Look how dirty he is. I'm going to throw him into the river to have a good wash. Ha 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 ha. And when they got to the destination in town, it wasn't that far, the soldier got out of the rickshaw without paying. And the driver shouted after him, knew enough English to the soldier, fare, dollars. And that's where the African American soldier turned around and said in perfect Isan language, dogs don't have money. So that's a way to deal with anger, or someone criticizes you. Turn it to your advantage, but don't get angry back, otherwise you've lost. So they say you talk too much, but say you listen too much. Okay. Like even sometimes people tell me off. They say, I eat too much. I should look after my health. My health is good. He said, why have you got so much fat here? And I said, it's not fat. You know what this really is? As a monk, I think you've known me for many years. How many years have you known me, Victor? Many, yeah. Was I always like this? I got photos of me. I was really thin when I was young. So what actually is this? What happened was that every year you grow in compassion. It's true. As a monk, you get kinder and kinder and kinder. When I was thin, I was much stricter. Now you're old and kind, so your heart keeps on growing. A long time ago, my heart got so big it was pressing against my rib cage. It couldn't go any further. But I didn't stop being more compassionate. So as my heart grew more, it went down and out. It's the only place it could go. It's not the sign of fat, it's just a big heart. And I'm sticking to that. You mentioned about relaxation, but if I'm too relaxed, I will become too drowsy. How do I deal with that? You don't. You haven't been relaxed enough. That's why you've lost your energy. Drowsiness, this is a serious question. Why are people drowsy? A lot of time because they're bored, they're negative, they want to escape into sleep. It's a place where they can fantasize and live, along their own terms. But if you really are relaxed, you don't waste energy. The amount of energy you have really starts to increase. And the drowsiness disappears. This also, drowsiness has a physical aspect to it. I was a very devoted meditator when I was young, still am obviously. But when I was young, Ajahn said you must not sleep more than 4 hours a day. That's the whole day. Even counting naps after lunch if you have one. 4 hours was all you were allowed. I managed to do 4.5, and that was my record. I couldn't get below 4.5. I felt just, I tried, but just you couldn't do it. And then I was always sleepy, especially in the mornings, in the first meditation. Why was that? I was what they call these days sleep deprived. Literally. And the food which you would eat in those days. This was in the northeast of Thailand, 1 meal a day. You couldn't really call it a meal. It's usually a bowl of sticky rice, and many times gross things on top, like frog. Really, just one big frog on top of your rice. No sauce, no seasoning, boiled. And that's all you had to eat that day. No soy sauce, no anything else, just boiled frog, like it just jumped into the pot. It was on top of your rice. So you know that I was diligent at school. That saved me. Please tell your grandchildren or children this. If you ever have children, they say, why to go to school? And just why should I just learn all that stuff? It's no relevance to my life. You never know when it will be relevant. Because I was a monk, I had my frog. The monk sitting next to me also had a bowl of rice with a frog on it. But I remembered paying attention at biology class. So I knew actually what to eat off that frog. The monk sitting next to me, true story. I was there, I saw it. He just but didn't know what part of a frog was what part. Obviously the legs, like a bit of chicken on there or something. But then it's not enough. So you start picking up the innards. This monk sitting next to me pressed the frog's bladder, and the frog still had urine in it. And that frog peed all over his rice. That was gross. That's true. He couldn't eat anymore after that. He pressed the wrong thing. So please tell your kids when they go to school, please pay attention. You never know when it's going to pay off for you, like it paid off for me. So, sleep deprived, malnourished, and the weather. This was in the jungles of Thailand. Like here, only much worse. Here you got aircon. Here you got some fans. There you got nothing. You're sitting out there in the jungle. It's hot. It's humid. There's hardly any wind because there's too many vines and trees. And I was born in London, in UK. I was not used to that. Just like I can't see why you've got all like cloths all over you. You've got cloths over your hair, for goodness sake. And some people have got, they've got over their blanket over their shoulders. How can you endure that? If I had the aircon controls, I'd turn it down a few degrees to about 16 or something. Because that's what I'm used to. You know, you've been to Jhana Grove, and many times I've told you that all the Malaysians who come and meditate there, and they just want the aircon turned off or turned up, heat up a bit, and I'm boiling. It's just I got different conditioning. That's all. So I was sleep deprived, malnourished. What else? It was really hot, very uncomfortable for me, and so of course I got sleepy. And I tried everything to overcome that sleepiness. But what worked for me? I remember one day I had to go to Bangkok to do the visa, to extend the visa in China for another year. Simple enough to do. But the best part of that, there was a monastery in Bangkok where we were allowed to stay. And first of all, you can have a good sleep there. Ajahn Chah wasn't there, so you can have 5 hours or 6 sometimes. Catch up on your sleep deprivation. Not indulging, it's just what you needed. And the food was much better in Bangkok than in the northeast. And brilliant, one of the monks had found there was one of the lecture halls in this monastery, it's a teaching monastery, which wasn't used in the early morning, and it had an aircon. Oh, that was like being in a heaven realm. They turned the aircon on, and then when I meditated, there's no sloth and torpor at all. Absolutely zero. You meditate there, and it was very, very comfortable. And I never fell asleep. I was just enjoying the fact it was a cool place. I could meditate, comfortable. I had enough food and enough sleep that day. And to this day, I will never forget that. That was the best Dhamma lesson on how to overcome sloth and torpor. Please make yourself comfortable. Please use an extra blanket if you need it. I'm okay. I got a lot of endurance. Have good food. Food which gives you energy. Don't be sleep deprived. I know that sometimes people are on retreats and they look at the schedule and go, I can't get up at 5:30 or 5 o'clock. If you can't, don't. Sometimes people get surprised at this. Ajahn Brahm, why aren't you more strict with us? I'm not more strict with you because I know what happens when you are strict. You get tight, tense, you can't relax, your body gets sick, and you tend to just try and slip away when no one else is looking. That's not how to meditate. Instead, you meditate because you enjoy it. You feel you like to meditate. Honestly, that's how I feel. Just like, again, this afternoon, came a bit early, but my body said, let's meditate. So meditation reception area. Because I didn't care where I meditated, my body said, let's meditate. And I always trust my body. If you feel tired, what's the best solution to that? Yes. And for some people, they said, no, I want to become enlightened. And that's when I teach Ananda's method of enlightenment. You know the Buddha's attendant? Please pay attention to this, you're my attendant. And so Ananda was working so hard looking after the Buddha. And eventually when the Buddha said he was going to die soon, imagine what that would do to you. Ananda loved the Buddha. 25 years he was a Buddha's attendant and not enlightened yet. So Ananda thought, if the Buddha becomes enlightened, I don't break through, what hope is there for me? And that's what happened. He was so busy looking after his teacher that when the Buddha died, passed away, Ananda still was. He was a street winner, but not more than that. And even though the Buddha said, you will become enlightened, sometimes, even if a Buddha says that, do you really believe that? All those years with the Buddha, seeing all these other people become enlightened, but not him. But anyway, the thing which changed him, they were going to have this big meeting in a Satapana cave. Some of you went to India recently. Did you remember going to the Satapana cave? Had all these monks, apparently went together, 500 monks. 499 of them were fully enlightened. The one who wasn't was Ananda. Imagine what it's like. How many people are on this retreat? Say 100? 80? 80. Imagine at the end of this retreat, I made the announcement, 79 of you are fully enlightened. Congratulations. And the one who's not enlightened is my attendant. How would you feel? Oh, that would really hurt, wouldn't it? And that's what Ananda felt like. 499 fully enlightened, he was the only one who wasn't at this meeting, to try and gather all the teachings together. So what he did, he decided, go for broke. He was going to meditate all night. It was enlightenment or bust. You know what happens? Every time people try that, it's always bust. So when the sun came up in the morning, he was as far away from enlightenment as he was when the sun went down the day before. So he thought, well, you don't have to go to the meeting for another hour or two yet. So he decided to go to his room and take a nap. And according to the story, and very believable, as he went to lay down, just before his head hit the pillow, he became the 500th enlightened monk there. So these days we call that the Ananda method of enlightenment. And being a mathematician is part of being a physicist. You always know probability theory. The more times you do that, the more likelihood. Yes, you increase your probability. And of course, what happened next, I don't know how this would have happened. But, he wasn't enlightened before, now he was. How do you tell people you're enlightened? You don't go up there and go on the internet and say, I'm enlightened now. Follow me, don't follow anybody else. That's not what a person does. What Ananda did, he deliberately, on purpose, arrived late at the meeting. 499 fully enlightened monks were there. They locked the doors. So Ananda couldn't get in. It was on purpose. So he went in through the keyhole. The psychic power. It's what we call he made an entrance. So anyone who gets enlightened here, please come in through the keyhole. And everybody, including me, will be pretty impressed. But anyway, I kind of know that. For the times when you're really tired, sometimes you can break through sloth and torpor, but you do it through willpower. And that willpower makes you so tired you can't get into these deep meditations, which I'm going to teach you later on. You need to be fully relaxed, at ease, at peace, not all tight and tense. That's actually how we overcome the sloth and torpor. Many times in the suttas, I haven't got the sutta with me here, I've got the reference somewhere, but many of you may know this. The Buddha was with his attendant Ananda, and he saw this monk sitting perfect posture, the right leg over the left leg, the back straight, right right hand over the left hand, so I'm slightly touching, chin in left, slightly in, sitting very, very beautiful posture, eyes closed. And the Buddha said, I'm worried about that monk. I love this story because it's not what you expect. And sure enough, a few weeks later that monk disrobed. He was a control freak. And the reason I remember that story because I was with a monk like that for so many years. Venerable Chinawara, his name was, he was a French monk. And I still have his alms bowl because when he disrobed, he gave the alms bowl to me. I always remember him. You never see him nodding, even during the all-night sittings. He'd always get up in time for everything. He'd hardly ever speak. And many of us, sometimes we were human beings, we talk about each other, we thought, wow, that monk must be so close to enlightenment. But then, he disrobed. And that's when he started talking about himself. He told me personally, he said, sometimes in those all-night sittings, I'd open my eyes and look at you, and your head was almost on the floor. And this French monk said, I was so jealous of you. He said, I wish I could do that. He couldn't let go at all. And that's why over many years, he got so tight and tense, he couldn't stand it any longer. He disrobed. So I can understand talking with him and seeing him for so many years, just how this works. His endurance was just incredible, but no happiness. And then anyway, that same sutta, the Buddha went deeper into the forest, and he saw another monk nodding, sloth and torpor. And he smiled at his attendant Ananda. I'm not worried about him. He knew how to let go. It was only a matter of time. If you let go, soon your brain, your mind recharges. And once it recharges, you have so much beautiful energy. With that sloth and torpor, I remember just forcing it many times. And sometimes you break through. Your head's up here, not down there anymore. But then you were so restless. It was like a pendulum going from sloth and torpor to restlessness and remorse. You calmed the restlessness down, you went back to sloth and torpor again. You couldn't find that middle where you were alert but not tense. So then eventually you worked it out, you understood. You're sloth and torpor, you're not particularly alert, but you've got some mindfulness there. Don't do anything. You're low energy, so don't waste energy. So sometimes you start the meditation, your head was like almost on the floor. And then, I never did anything. I hope this happens to you, to actually prove it for yourself. Then the energy started to come back again. I was not wasting any energy, not thinking, not worrying, just being as mindful as I could. And then the body straightened up by itself. That's the most wonderful thing, to see it does it itself. I never told it to straighten up. It just did it. It had enough energy, that's what I wanted to do. And then you were alert, aware, and you weren't restless at all. You found the middle way between restlessness and remorse and sloth and torpor. You usually find that from the point of sloth and torpor first. And just don't do anything, be with it, understand it, get to know it, be kind to it, and then you soon get your energy back. It's a beautiful way of meditating. And that's also what I did with learning how to pass exams. 3-hour exam in quantum physics. You got another one in the afternoon of astrophysics of the galaxy coming up in an hour's time. Imagine how you feel, 3-hour paper in quantum physics. You're exhausted. And you got another exam coming in 40 minutes time. So I learned even then, just relax, don't worry, stay in this moment, just be tired. It's not against any precept. And then just allow it to be. And soon it's like charging a mobile phone, which is out of juice. The juice comes back again. You've got all your energies back. That's how it works. That's by far the best way of overcoming sloth and torpor. You do it out of fear, out of willpower, and you're just wasting energy. Okay? There's only a few questions left. Actually, I haven't answered them. This is one of them. Okay, I've got 35 minutes. How are you going? You've had enough of questions so far? Want me to carry on? Oh, be kind. Okay, anyway, do a few more. How do we relax to the max without being so comfortable as to fall into, get lost in thoughts? Okay, this is like the restlessness. Also, do we have to pay attention to a particular point around the nostril area? Oh my goodness, can I answer the second question first? Because the first time I came to Malaysia, I couldn't believe it that people were complaining about samadhi headache. In all those years I've been meditating, it was the first time I've heard about samadhi headache. And then I couldn't understand what you were doing. And I know that you've got great motivation, each one of you. You will have to work very hard. And so you were doing that with your meditation. Someone told you to watch the breath at the tip of the nose. The Buddha never said that. This is not nose meditation. It's breath meditation. And to explain clearly what I mean, I'm now going to take my spectacles off. And I'm going to meditate on the tip of my nose with the eyes open. You're only supposed to know the breath, not look at the breath. But it's psychology. Many of you, if you try to focus your mind on the nose, your eyes go there too. And if you hold that for half an hour, you're going to get a very big headache across here. And that was the reason for samadhi headache. So hopefully I got rid of that. And for me, I had an advantage. My father had asthma, so I inherited some allergies, especially for hay fever. So if there's any sort of chemicals or flowers, and look at me now, I've got to sit next to all the flowers because I'm a senior monk. And so sometimes you do get some hay fever. I've got a tiny bit of hay fever. My nostrils are a little blocked up today. But I'm very grateful for that. Because I had hay fever, a lot of time I looked to the tip of my nose, but there's no air going in or out. I had a blocked nose, had hay fever. So I thought at the time I couldn't meditate. How can you meditate when your nose is blocked? And I thought, hang on, I'm still breathing, but not through my nose. So I solved that problem. It was a very useful technique. When I started meditating, I asked myself, now, am I breathing in or am I breathing out? It's a simple question. And I didn't care at all where that sensation of breath was located. I didn't need to locate it. I always knew I was breathing in or breathing out. Otherwise I'd be dead. And I knew I wasn't dead. So I knew the breath was either going in or going out. And that's all I needed to know. I never located the breath on any part of my body. And that gave me a huge advantage. You were letting go of the body so early. That's how the breath or the meditation got so deep so quickly. So you don't need to locate it anywhere. You don't pay attention to any particular point in the nostril area. You don't even pay attention to the nostrils. You pay attention to the breath. And a lot of times, because I can teach meditation now, especially to Westerners, that's all I ever do. I don't never tell them, watch the tip of your nose. No, I say, are you breathing in or are you breathing out? You know the answer to that one. That's all you need to keep knowing. It's much more simple and much more effective. But the first part of the question, how do we relax to the max without being so comfortable as to get lost in thoughts? If you are really comfortable, why do you need to get lost in thoughts or even have any thoughts? Because what happens is many thoughts are your escape from reality, because you're not comfortable here. For so long, when I was meditating, I was actually taught by the many teachers, or what I heard was that if you get into a thought, catch that thought and bring your attention back onto the breath. It doesn't matter how many times, don't punish yourself or feel inadequate. Keep bringing it back onto the breath. Wander off, bring it back onto the breath. I did that for about 6 or 7 years. It didn't work. So I thought, no, this is not what you should be doing. Instead, I decided to investigate. Why was I thinking of these thoughts? What is so simple just to watch the breath? Watch the breath go in, breath go out. Don't you like simplicity? Instead of being frustrated with all these other thoughts, why do these thoughts come up in the first place? And don't ever think that they come up by themselves. They don't. You go looking for something to disturb yourself. And I realize it's because my mind was upset at me. I was trying to control my mind, and my mind was being rebellious. And one of the examples which changed me, I've already said sort of sensual things already. This is another true story. My 6th range retreat. Please excuse me again. But on this particular story, I found a perfect monastery in the north of Thailand. For an Englishman, it was just idyllic. It was right in the middle of a tea plantation. Honestly, I could have as much tea as I ever wanted, all for free. And also, it's the first time, this was 44 years ago. Also, the first time I came across this drink called kombucha. You know that one? Yeah. The first time I'd ever seen it, but they made it out of the excess tea they had. And it was a whole bottle every day. Delicious. And it had a cave. And you know how much I love caves. I would go in there after the alms round in the morning, and I wash my bowl, go in there to meditate for most of the day. It was cool. And there's some great meditation in there, but also it had lots of bats in that cave. And you know all my stories about, bat poo and how that makes fruit really delicious? That's where this story came from. At the front of that cave, there was a papaya tree. And that papaya tree would get all the fertilizer from the bats as they flew into the cave after doing whatever they did outside. And as they came out of that cave, the soil was so incredibly rich. And that one single papaya tree in the front of that cave, sometimes you could see the papaya go bigger and bigger and start getting red. It was ready for eating. And as a monk, I could not pick that a papaya? And so what I would do, and I can't tell anybody to pick it for me, I would just take one of the lay people from the village, say, oh, look at that papaya. And because they've been Buddhists for generations, they knew exactly what I meant. And that's what I'd have, the next morning for breakfast, or for my meal of the day. And honestly, I'd eat the whole lot. It was the most delicious papaya I've ever eaten, ever. And even now, you can't get any papaya, anything like that. It was incredibly well fertilized and easy to eat and healthy for you as well. And from that, you know that story. If anyone is angry to you, have some difficulties in life or disappointments, remember that what that is, it's just, you stepped into some bat poo. Don't think, oh, poor you, what a terrible, bad fortune you've had. Instead, take that bat poo home with you. Never ever scrape it off your shoes until you get home. And scrape it off under your papaya tree. Or mango tree if you wish. Whatever fruit you like at home. Scrape it off under that, and in 1 year's time, your papaya or mango will be sweeter, more juicy than any mango you've ever eaten in your whole life. But you must always remember, when you're eating into that mango and the juice is dripping down your cheeks, remember what you're really eating. Bat poo. That's how to transform the suffering we experience in life into something beautiful. You grow wisdom and compassion, all sorts of wonderful things from it. So that's actually how you make use of that. So I remember that. It was a wonderful monastery. I had a wonderful time there. I learned so much from that nice little cave. So anyway, that's how I learned how to relax to the max. Really relaxing means your body is so comfortable, it disappears. Have you ever heard that happen in meditation? You're perfectly awake, you're not sleepy at all. You can't feel your hands, you can't feel your back, you can't feel your legs. The body vanishes. You can only do that when it's comfortable. One of the first times that happened when I was a lay person was in a Zen monastery I went to. This was 1970, 71. I would go to any monastery there was to meditate because you didn't have much choice. So this was a Zen monastery in the north of England, and when I went there, I didn't know how to do Zen meditation. All I did know, actually at first, it was really a stupid thing to do, was they had a Zen monk walk behind you with a big stick. Have you ever gone to a Zen retreat? That's one way of overcoming sloth and torpor, but it's not a good way. Even though, I later on was quite well known for my sloth and torpor, but at that time, the man sitting next to me was more sleepy than I was. Honestly, he got hit first. And after that, I wasn't sleepy all retreat. I was terrified. And also, when I was in Hong Kong later on as a monk, I heard what happens in mainland China on Zen retreats. I was told this by another Mahayana Chinese monk at this temple over in Hong Kong. Monks, we gossip too. We get all the latest news. What's happening in Buddhism in mainland China? And he said, well, he was on this retreat, and the teacher there went down the line of meditators, and there's this elderly lady there. She was sleepy, nodding. So he hit her on the back with his Zen stick. She didn't like that at all. You know what she did? It's one of the reasons why on this retreat you have to surrender all your mobile phones before you start the retreat. You didn't have to do that on this retreat. She still had her mobile phone. So she took it out of her pocket and she called the police in mainland China. And the police came and arrested that monk. And that was the end of the retreat. True story. So be careful. Anyway, so it didn't make any sense to me because it was fear which was keeping you awake. And that's not a really good emotion to encourage. So eventually, one day I was just sitting facing the wall. You're supposed to meditate with your eyes open in the Zen retreat. So my eyes were wide open, staring at a wall. My advantage was I'd done some Theravada meditation before. I knew how to be mindful, how to be still and not to think. So I was just staring at this whitewashed wall, getting quite peaceful. And then the wall vanished. It kind of disappeared. Like some magic trick. One moment there was a wall, next minute there was nothing. That was kind of freaky. But I knew enough about science to understand what was happening. The way your brain works, if something is not loud or dangerous, it disappears. Can you hear the sound of the aircon? In a few moments you won't hear it at all. It disappears. It's not a threat, it's pretty constant. If it's some of the feelings in your body, if they don't change much, you don't pay too much attention to them, there's other things to pay attention to, your body vanishes. Now I ask you, for those of you who wish to try this, close your eyes. When I first close my eyes, I can see the inside of my eyelids. That's not interesting for the brain. It turns off. And the whole sense of sight vanishes. You can open your eyes again now if you wish. That's what was happening to me when I was washing a wall. There was a whitewashed wall. There's no works of art on it. So after a while, the brain sense of sight turned off. Eyes were open, but I couldn't see. Perfectly light. There was nothing which was important. And that's what meditation's about. Your senses turn off. What do you think happens when sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch all turn off? If you've been meditating, your mind is strong. That's all you're aware was next, the mind. The sixth sense. And the other five senses all turned off. And then that mind gets energy, because no energy is spent in sound, smell, sight, taste, touch. Got them all confused, but anyway, they all turn off. And then you see these beautiful lights in the mind, the nimittas. I'll talk much more about that later on. You've heard me talk about it before. It's just what happens. It's just how you perceive, interpret the mind at first. And then you're really having some fun. I say that, you're not doing it because you're dull, it happens naturally. It's always really safe, very enjoyable. Please never get afraid of this weird stuff which happens in meditation. You're with, can I say I'm one of the experts in things like nimittas? So you're with the kind of a monk who can really help. Encourage and make sure they happen, and you have some wonderful times. And they're the pre-jhanas. Even that, you're having a wonderful time. Blissed out. When you come out of those things afterwards, you're not sleepy at all, really clear-minded, any work you have to do, you're so productive. This is where you can write amazing works of prose or poetry or art or whatever, when the 5 hindrances have been subdued. And this is where you first start to experience this in the nimitta state of meditation. I think, I'm not quite sure about you, but I think I've had enough. Thank you so much. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.